You look at Cleveland, unstable organization, constantly in flux, poor decisions. They've got talent, but you can't build on a cracked foundation. Jason Kelce. That's the quote. That's the moment. The line that took a simmering undercurrent of NFL skepticism and exploded it into full-on media wildfire. Because with just one calmly delivered sentence, Jason Kelce, recently retired, recently unfiltered, and perpetually respected, didn't just call out the Cleveland Browns. He diagnosed them. And the Browns? Oh, they did not take it well. In fact, the Browns front office responded like a high school clique after someone posted a sub-tweet, defensive, dramatic, and way too quick to claim the comment was disrespectful and uninformed.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Except it wasn't. It was laser-focused truth, served by a man who's lived championship culture and can smell dysfunction from a mile away. Let's set the stage. Jason Kelce has nothing to prove. The guy's a Super Bowl winner, a multiple-time Pro Bowler, and one of the most beloved personalities in modern football. Now that he's retired, he's turned his podcast mic into a post-career scalpel, and no team was ready for him to take aim at Cleveland. But when he did, he didn't yell. He didn't get theatrical. He just said the one thing Cleveland's been pretending isn't obvious. This franchise, for all its star power and emotional fan base, is a mess. Let's be honest, the Browns' dysfunction isn't breaking news. They've been stuck in a loop for decades. Coaching changes, quarterback chaos, flashy off-season moves that crash and burn before Halloween. Every September starts with "this could be our year," and by December it's, well, next year's schedule looks easier. And in the middle of it all, a front office that talks like a contender, but moves like it's running a weekly crisis PR workshop. Kelce saw through the facade. He saw the shiny helmets, the headline-grabbing contracts, the fan base foaming at the mouth with loyalty. And he saw that none of it matters if the people in charge don't know how to build something stable. And stability is exactly what Cleveland lacks. Let's talk to Sean Watson. A $230 million, fully guaranteed deal. The kind of contract that redefined the quarterback market and shattered every notion of risk management in the NFL. They gave away picks, cap flexibility, and worst of all, leverage. Because now, no matter how Watson plays, whether he shines, stumbles, or straight up disappears, the Browns are married to that decision. There's no exit, no clean escape. It's ride or die, and right now, it's looking wobbly. And Kelce knows that. He pointed it out not to be cruel, but because that one contract represents everything wrong with how Cleveland makes decisions. They don't plan. They panic. And when you build your team around panic moves instead of patience, guess what happens? You crash. You burn. You waste talent. And oh, Cleveland has talent. Let's not forget, this isn't a roster of scrubs. This is a team with Myles Garrett wreaking havoc on every snap. A secondary full of speed. A receiving core with weapons. And before the injury, Nick Chubb was a walking highlight reel. The pieces are there. But pieces don't matter if the puzzle's never finished. And every year, something breaks. A coaching meltdown. A locker room whisper. A QB controversy. A strategic blunder on fourth down that triggers a media storm. And then, the excuses start. Injuries. Weather. Refs. Still building chemistry. The Browns don't lose. They almost win. Every single year. Kelce called out that pattern. And that's what stung the most. Because, in his quote, he wasn't just critiquing a football team. He was describing a culture. One that still hasn't figured out who it is, or how to survive in a division full of cold-blooded killers. Let's break that down. The Ravens? Ruthless. Consistent. Well-run. They draft smart, they play physical, and they don't implode after a 2-game losing streak. The Bengals? Cool, calculated, Burrow-brained. They hit on their core, built around it, and stayed quiet while doing it. The Steelers? Oh please, they could finish 9-8 with a quarterback from Craigslist. Mike Tomlin is a walking culture factory. They don't rebuild. They reload. And then there's Cleveland. standing in the middle of a war zone with a roster full of weapons and no map. When Kelce says unstable, he doesn't mean wildcard instability. He means philosophical instability. No clear vision, no patience, just expensive players and a perpetual identity crisis. And let's not forget what kicked this whole thing back into the headlines. Joe Flacco, the 39-year-old walking dad joke who hadn't been relevant since the Obama administration, suddenly waltzes into Cleveland and outplays a $230 million franchise QB. That wasn't just a feel-good story. That was a full-on red flag. Kelce saw it and said the quiet part out loud. How is this happening? How is it that the momentary stability provided by an aging quarterback gave this team more poise, more control, and more momentum than the guy they've spent years justifying? You can't answer that question with stats. You answer it with structure. And Cleveland hasn't built that. They've built headlines and hope and highlight reels that go viral in week 3 and vanish by week 12. So the Browns did what they do best. They got mad. Not better. Mad. The owner took it personally. The press ran to their defense. And the locker room? Silent. Awkward. Because deep down the players know. They feel it. They see the cracks in the foundation. They just can't say it out loud. So Kelce did it for them. And that brings us to now. This is the line in the sand. The Browns can either keep spinning this narrative, that they're on the verge, that they're being disrespected, that Jason Kelce doesn't understand the full picture, or they can finally admit the obvious. You don't need more talent. You don't need a new scheme. You don't need a rebrand or a hype video. You need a full-on organizational exorcism. Clean house. Get aligned. Build something real. Stick with it. And stop pretending every 9 to 8 season is a success story. Because guess what? Jason Kelce wants you to prove him wrong. We all do. Everyone watching this is rooting for the Browns to finally flip the script, not because they're perfect, but because it's exhausting watching a team with this much potential keep falling on the same sword every year. But you can't just want to change the narrative. You have to earn it. And if you don't silence your critics. You confirm them. All right, that's your deep dive into the Browns versus Kelce saga. Now it's your turn. Was Jason Kelce out of line? Or just the first person to say what we've all been thinking? Do the Browns finally get serious this season? Or are we in for another year of high expectations and higher letdowns? Drop your takes in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you live for the chaos of sports colliding with ego, pride, and public meltdowns. And throw this video a like if you're begging Cleveland to finally make the leap. Because right now, the Browns aren't in a fight with Jason Kelce. They're in a fight with the truth. And it's undefeated. So far, we've walked through Jason Kelce's gut punch of a quote, the Browns' predictably fragile reaction, and the long list of reasons why his words weren't just accurate. They were inevitable. But now, let's peel back one more layer and talk about the one thing that truly separates teams that win from teams that watch others win. Self-awareness. See, Kelce's quote didn't just expose Cleveland's broken decision-making. It held up a mirror to a franchise that's been avoiding its own reflection for decades. Because deep down, this team knows it's been running on fumes and denial for years. And when a guy like Kelce, someone who knows what a real organization looks like, calls it out, that's not a shot. That's a siren. Let's just revisit that quote for the 100th time, because it deserves to be carved in stone. You look at Cleveland, unstable organization, constantly in flux, poor decisions. They've got talent, but you can't build on a cracked foundation. You can't build on a cracked foundation. Now look, that's not just a metaphor for football. That's a blueprint for failure in any walk of life. If your structure is unstable, if your culture, your leadership, your internal processes are all built on ego, impulse, and PR spins, you will fall. Doesn't matter how much talent you stack on top. Eventually, gravity wins. And that's where the Browns are. Again, on paper, they should be a threat. Myles Garrett is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate every season. The offensive line, when healthy, is brutal. The skill positions are stacked. The defensive backs are nasty. There's no reason this team should be falling apart. But they do. Over and over. For one simple reason. They don't know who they are. Some days, they want to be a run-heavy, smash-mouth team with Chubb and an elite defense. Other days, they want to be a high-flying, pass-first team with Watson slinging it deep. Some weeks, they're aggressive on fourth down. Other weeks, they're punting from a 40 like it's 2005. The strategy shifts. The energy changes. The identity doesn't exist. And that inconsistency bleeds into everything. The locker room, the coaching decisions, the media perception, the fan base loyalty. Even the player's body language looks different depending on the week. That's why Kelce's critique mattered. Because he didn't say the Browns suck. He said the Browns are uncertain. And that's worse. Because a bad team with a plan can become a good team. But a talented team with no plan? That's a time bomb. And don't get it twisted. Other players heard what Kelce said too. You think guys around the league aren't watching this unfold? You think free agents aren't clocking the Browns' chaotic vibes and thinking, yeah, I'll pass? This kind of dysfunction leaks out. It gets whispered in locker rooms. It shows up in anonymous player polls. And then suddenly, you can't land the guy you want in free agency. Or your star player starts wondering if this franchise is the place to build a legacy. Or your coach starts coaching not to lose instead of coaching to win, because one bad game might cost him his job. And then, you're back in the loop. The Cleveland loop. That ever-spinning carousel of hope, hype, heartbreak, and hindsight. It's the same every year. Off-season optimism. This is the year. Look at this roster. Look at these signings. Hot start. Maybe a 3-1 record. Maybe a blowout win over an overrated team. The hype train goes off the rails. Reality check. A sloppy loss. A QB injury. A sideline argument caught on camera. The crack show. Excuse season. We're still gelling. The refs blew that call. Injuries have been brutal. The same script every year. Collapse. Wild card slips away. Playoff contention becomes mathematical. Fan morale hits the floor. Reset. We learned a lot. We're close. We just need to fix a few things. Cue the off-season spin cycle. That's not a team. That's a treadmill. And Jason Kelce saw it coming. You know why? Because he's seen the opposite. He's lived in a locker room where every player knows their role, where coaches aren't scared of criticism, where the game plan isn't rewritten every Monday morning to chase headlines. He's seen a front office trust the process, not just say the phrase while doing the exact opposite. That's why he spoke up. Not to troll, not to dunk on the Browns, but because someone had to. And here's the wildest part. Kelce wants the Browns to be good. We all do. The NFL is better when Cleveland is competitive. That fan base deserves to celebrate. The city deserves to feel like its team is more than a seasonal punchline. There's something undeniably electric about a Browns playoff game. The energy is different. It's raw. It's real. But that's the tragedy of it. They have everything, except the leadership to bring it together. You can't build a championship team by skipping steps. You can't microwave culture. You can't statement game your way out of systemic problems. It takes years. It takes vision. It takes humility. And until the Browns realize that, until they stop reacting to every critique like it's an insult and start taking it as free advice from people who actually know how to win, they'll keep ending up here. Another off-season. Another meltdown. Another quote that hits too close to home. Another round of, but we've got so much talent. Yeah, you do. But you also have a cracked foundation. And unless that gets fixed, unless someone in that building finally stands up and says, we're done pretending, we're changing everything for real, then Jason Kelce's quote won't just be a viral soundbite. It'll be your legacy. So here's the real question. Do the Browns want to prove Kelce wrong? Because right now, the response says no. The response says, how dare you? The right response should have been, he's not wrong. Let's fix it. But maybe, just maybe, this is the moment that turns it all around. Maybe the shame burns hot enough this time. Maybe the fans push back hard enough. Maybe the players have a private meeting. Maybe someone in the front office finally admits, We've been playing dress up as a contender. Let's stop. Because if that happens, if the Browns actually commit to real change, not cosmetic, not marketing driven, but real structural accountability, then maybe Kelce's words become a footnote in a redemption story. And that would be poetic. But if not, if they run it back with the same culture, the same denial, and the same PR spin, then Jason Kelce didn't warn the Browns. He prophesied their next downfall. We've spent all this time dissecting what Jason Kelce said. We've analyzed the quote. We've explored the Browns' reaction. We've walked through years of instability, bad decisions, and costly gambles disguised as confidence. But if you're still here, and I know you are, it's time to get painfully, uncomfortably honest about something else. Something deeper. This isn't just a Browns problem. This is an NFL culture problem. And Cleveland just happens to be the most obvious, most dramatic, most chronically public example of what happens when a franchise starts believing its own hype and forgets how to build from the inside out. Because here's the truth. In this league, you can fake it for a while. A hot start, a few lucky breaks, some good social media clips. Suddenly you're a team to watch. Suddenly you're on everyone's radar. Suddenly, you're in the dark horse contender tier. But the NFL doesn't care about hype. The NFL cares about habits. And when you zoom out and look at how the Browns operate, it's not just that they lose, it's how they lose. The collapses are predictable. The failures are rehearsed. The dysfunction? At this point, it's practically scripted. And yet, year after year, they act shocked when the same movie plays out. But let's not pretend this all comes down to Jason Kelce's one comment. This moment, this PR explosion, this emotionally charged counterattack by ownership, was just the latest flare-up of a much larger, long-festering infection. Because while the Browns were angry at Kelce's words, what they should have been was grateful. Grateful that someone outside the building finally said what everyone inside the building has been too scared, too loyal, or too tired to say. This organization needs a full reset. Not a new logo. Not a new uniform. Not another quarterback with a big arm and a big contract. Not another head coach who talks a good game in press conferences, but loses the locker room by week 10. A reset. You don't need to change the names on the jerseys. You need to change the wiring behind the walls. Because everything Cleveland builds starts strong and falls apart. And when that pattern repeats itself for 2 decades, that's not a coincidence. That's not bad luck. That's your blueprint. And the scariest part? At this point, the Browns are so used to the noise, they might not even hear it anymore. The media chatter, the fan frustration, the internal dysfunction. It's all just part of the job now. Another Monday, another crisis to PR manage until the next one hits. And that's the real danger. Not failure, but numbness to failure. That's what Jason Kelce was pushing against. Because when you've played on a Super Bowl team, you know what real culture looks like. It's quiet. It's boring. It's consistent. It's unapologetically accountable. And when you compare that to what's been happening in Cleveland, it's night and day. Let's go back to the Deshaun Watson deal for a second. Because that contract, that historic, fully guaranteed contract, wasn't just a football decision. It was a franchise-defining moment. It was the Browns saying to the league, we're going all in. They leveraged their future, their image, their flexibility, their morals, all of it on one man, one bet, one belief that Deshaun Watson would be the missing piece. And since then, injuries, inconsistency, questions, excuses. And now, Joe Flacco. That's not to hate on Flacco. What he did last season was a minor miracle. But when your billion-dollar franchise feels more stable with a quarterback you signed out of semi-retirement than with a guy you handed $230 million to, you've got a structural issue. And Kelce just happened to be the guy brave enough and free enough to say it out loud. Because that's the thing. Jason Kelce doesn't work for a team. He's not angling for a front office job. He doesn't care about getting invited to training camps or networking his way into a pre-game segment on ESPN. He's free. And when a guy with that kind of freedom, who's also one of the most respected voices in football, calls your franchise unstable, that should stop you in your tracks. That should lead to a closed-door meeting, not a press release. That should spark soul-searching, not spin control. But Cleveland didn't do that. They lashed out, as always, because accountability has never been this team's specialty. Reaction? Sure. Response? Every time. But reflection? Actual self-assessment? That's rare. And now, they've backed themselves into a corner. Because if this season doesn't go well, and let's be real, the AFC North is a jungle, then all of this Kelce stuff becomes prophecy. It becomes evidence. It becomes a permanent part of the Cleveland Browns narrative. And if it does go well, if they finally get it together, stay healthy, stay focused, and push deep into the playoffs, then Kelce's quote becomes a turning point. The moment that woke them up. The moment that forced them to change. That's the power of a call-out. It's not about being right. It's about what you do with it. So what will Cleveland do? We're watching. The league is watching. The fans? They've been watching and waiting for 2 decades. This isn't about one man's opinion anymore. This is about whether a franchise, after years of pretending, can finally do the one thing it's never been able to do. Look inward. Because the only thing scarier than being called unstable is proving it. Again, publicly, with cameras rolling. Final drive. No timeouts. Balls in your court, Cleveland. What's it gonna be? Are you going to keep defending the mistakes? Keep spinning the dysfunction? Keep blaming the media, the past, the refs, the injuries? Or are you finally going to own your story? Because this is your moment. The talent is there. The time is now. And the excuses? They've expired. All right, it's time for you to sound off. Do you think Jason Kelce was out of line? Or was he the only one brave enough to tell the Browns what they've needed to hear for years? Can Cleveland finally break the cycle of dysfunction? Or is this just another chapter in the NFL's longest-running tragedy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button for more breakdowns of football chaos, celebrity clapbacks, and the drama behind the scoreboard. And smash the like button if you're ready to see a Browns team that doesn't just talk about potential, but delivers on it. Because we're not rooting against Cleveland. We're rooting for them to wake up before it's too late. Again.